What's going on, everybody? Good evening. It's been a while since we've done a live stream. Spaz is in the chat. Thank you. Yeah, we're gonna run some sims. We're gonna look at some EAP data, and then we'll be getting cooking for next week as well with a few more updates. But this will be a good start to getting all of that going. Kieran, welcome. We'll get going in just a second. All right. So this is how we're going to do it for today. I'll make this a little bit bigger. I might hide myself if I'm blocking too much data, but we got a couple things to look at. So first things first, we'll just kind of walk through it. So for Showdown, we got live tournament stats, Showdown EAP data. We're going to spend a few minutes, a good chunk of time in the Showdown EAP data and walk through that and try to kind of build out a player pool. And then we'll hop into the lineup IQ, which is kind of the new renovation for the DFS sims that we had up a couple weeks ago. The contest sims are not yet up, but there's a way to hack it for Classic. And hopefully have some like field lineups up for next week for the US Open. That's the plan. But let's kind of walk through this really quick. So as far as Showdown goes, a couple things we can do. Let me make sure real quick. Hang on a second. I'm afraid my computer's about to go into dark mode or whatever with the blue light canceled out. So hang on one second. That gets quite annoying. Honestly, I set it up on all my computers and I always turn it off. So I'm not sure why I even have it up. Here we go. Night shift. Where you at? There you are. Off. There we go. We're back up. Okay. You guys can still see. Perfect. Okay. So the live tournament stats, this updates live throughout the day. I don't really use this for Showdown, but it is a nice way to go into it if you're curious about the slate, round one or round two, looking at the wave splits and stuff. It's interesting looking at the last 2 days with AM playing harder. That can always go in. Well, I guess it wouldn't after 2 rounds. Typically, that after 1 round, you could say that could be chalked up to just there were better players in the PM wave. We've seen that in the US Open a couple of times where they just hammered a bunch of guys late on a Friday for primetime coverage on the West Coast or something. And it is what it is. Like there's better players and the wave will look better as long as they play decent, right? So this is an easy way for to kind of look through how the waves kind of shook out and then give you an overall look at their stats throughout the day as the tournament kind of unfolds. But you can always use that. For Showdown EAP data, I think this is where the magic happens, at least for me. And for Sky, when he first kind of introduced this to me, man, 5-6 years ago now, probably 6 years ago. So this is what we're going to look at. Been a tad cooler in the AM. Yeah, I forget what event. We kind of talked about that as like typically AM with softer conditions is advantageous, right? Like looking at guys being able to hit their irons well. If it's softer into the greens, if they hit them well, they're going to be kind of more rewarded, assuming their distance control is good, their accuracy is good and all that stuff. But there was, was it the cricket club? I want to say it might have been the cricket club where like I could have argued that the afternoon firming up makes the course play shorter. And maybe that's what we're seeing here. The DAS boost has been a tad cooler. So like, yeah, I mean, I could see that. And also, maybe the course firms up a little bit and just plays easier. The wind's been down, so that hasn't changed. How is Camp Champ leading? That's a very good question. So let's take a look at the EAP data. We'll try to make this, hopefully this is okay on the screen, depending on what device you're looking at. It looks okay on my end. It might be a little bit squished on smaller devices. So But yeah, you can check this out. So a couple new enhancements we have now. I added a quick filter, which is what I used to do a lot in Excel. So when this was used to be in Excel, I used to do a bunch of easy, fast filtering on like above average, 12 feet, 18 feet, spectrum approach, positive approach, etc. And didn't really have that. This was kind of just, wouldn't say thrown together, but just kind of put out there so you can kind of look at the data, but it wasn't real clean. So we did add it where now you can kind of start to break down, if you just want to look at 24 foot, not just, you can add several. And we can start to filter this by the guys in the top for each. You could do like approach positive top 50 and kind of narrow this down really easily without having to filter, weighted driving distance. I will say driving distance didn't look that impressive in some of the, the top 20 guys. Doesn't mean they don't have the distance, but definitely didn't look like that's where they were gaining anything on the field. Let's see. Good shots, don't really care. We'll just do spectrum approach. So this is just like really quickly taking in a few filters, and then I could add in another proximity stat, like I could do 18 feet, and that narrows it down a little bit. And then we could use a player pool that gets us into for the FGB sims. I'll clear that out. So we got round 1 and round 2. We'll look at round 2 to start with. We'll start here. How I always do it is looking at 18 feet. That's usually a good initial start. And if it looks pretty thin, you can go out to 24 feet. Like, for example, next week at the US Open. Most likely, if you were to jump in here and look at 12 feet, it'd just be ridiculous. If you looked at 18 feet, you're like, man, there's like 2 guys that had 5 shots inside of 18 feet and everybody else sucked. Well, let's go out to 24 feet and even go out to 30 feet and just see who's hitting it relatively close compared to the field. So it does depend on the golf course. There are certainly some weeks like Sony, the American Express, where 12 feet and even sometimes 6 feet is kind of a difference maker. Who's hitting it, inside of, should be like 8 feet or 10 feet, but 12 and 6 is a pretty good round number. So we can start there with 18 feet. And this is kind of like the first grouping of guys. Ideally, I don't know how you guys would want to do this. I would probably at least add a filter where we can take out all the guys that missed the cut, because right now I don't have that up here and makes it kind of confusing. But I'll add a filter and just kind of default it to hide miscut guys. It's already hidden in the lineup IQ, so when you go to run lineups, you're not going to get any guys that missed the cut. But for this, it just shows all the stats. It probably would be easier just to hide guys that aren't playing tomorrow, because you're not really worried about them anyways. So this will probably be where I start. Let me refresh the favorites really quick, because I'm actually going to build a player pool from this and then run the sims from it. All right. So let's do 18 feet, round 2. Resort that. So as you go down the board, like typically 18 feet, 24 feet, hopefully you'll see it pretty consistent in each of those. You'll see guys that kind of break out. Like you'll see here, David Lipsky had 8 shots inside of 18 feet. He only had 8 inside of 24 feet, 10 inside of 30 feet. It really wasn't like a nice linear progression of hitting a bunch inside of 30 feet, just a few less inside of 24 feet, a few less inside of 18 feet. It's kind of like a big chunk and then not much better. I'd much rather see like Ryan Fox looks great, seeing 9 shots, 11 shots, 12 shots. That looks good. Even this here, not the worst. He's another example of the distance I was talking about for Mateo Montecero. 9 feet or 9 shots inside of 18 feet, 9 shots, and then 13 shots. This looks really nice for Luke List. Like that's probably as close to as perfect as you can get. 14 of 18 inside of 30 feet, and then that's linearly going down, which is what you would expect. You would see fewer shots inside of each of those buckets as you go down. So I'm just going to check them so I don't forget. But yeah, this would be the perfect way to start. Let me see if we can do without just kind of cutting out everybody. So let's just kind of start highlighting some of the guys that really stand out. and we can always go take them off if we want to. So like spectrum approach is a key column for me. Approach positive and off the tee positive. I do like looking at both. You'll see it kind of goes hand in hand with distance. So as we talk about every week with strokes gained off the tee, there's two components. Obviously, distance is a big one, and then kind of it's accuracy / distance left to the pin. I've brought up the dogleg, concept quite a bit. Someone could hit it 330 in the left rough, someone could hit it 330 in the right rough. Someone's going to gain more strokes off the tee because they're closer to the hole on which side of that dogleg. So there is a accuracy component, but it's not really accuracy. But you will see it's very correlated with distance. So like David Lipsky's losing 18 yards off the tee in distance, and he's only gaining on 42% of his tee shots. He's losing a little bit off the tee. Makes sense. Same with Matteo Montecero, losing about 10 yards against the field. It's honestly pretty bad on this type of golf course. The weird one is like even here's a good example, like John Pack gaining pretty good accuracy and losing 13 yards on the field, and he's only gaining on 57% of his tee shots, just slightly positive. So like I think distance is a big factor to always consider, but positive off the tee kind of goes hand in hand with that. So yeah, we'll go down the board. Ryan Fox looks pretty good. I'm not going to completely cut out guys losing distance off the tee. It's a weird phrase, losing distance off the tee, but losing to the field, yardage off the tee. But we will look at their approaches, and then we'll look at round one as well and just try to back it up. So kind of all these guys would fit like the first run. I think David Lipsky is pretty much out. I would not go there. Even with the approach number, losing 20 yards off the tee, only gaining on 42%, like I'm not going to play that. I'd say Keith Mitchell's still pretty good. We'll just kind of go down the board. All these guys look reasonable to kind of pass the first test, we'll say. So we'll go down here. And then when we run the sims, we'll kind of narrow this down and see who's kind of the best upside plays when you're building them together, considering their salary and everything else. We'll keep John Pack in there. And if you guys have any questions, let me know. List MC. Thank you. Like I said, perfect. I need to have the guys. Luckily, they won't fall into the sims, but still just to try to keep this clean. I'll have this up tonight after we get done with this show. It's a pretty easy filter to add. So appreciate that. Daz Abu. I'm sure I know all you guys, but unfortunately your names come through as your anonymous screen name, so your wife doesn't know what you're watching. You got Justin Rose, Gordon Sargent missed the cut. Okay. Nick Taylor. Dietrich. Not great. Like he's losing a lot off the tee. I'm going to say no on Dietrich. We'll say Kevin Roy, okay. And I think that's probably it. We could do, like, everybody else here starts to kind of narrow out a good bit. Let's do a second run through of like 24 feet just to see if there's like any stragglers that, might. I brought this up before too. Like sometimes there's a borderline on guy just, there's good possibility. There's a guy that hits, 7 shots inside of 18 feet and they only went, they're 17 feet from the hole. Another guy's hitting them 19 feet. Like it's 2 foot difference. They fall into separate buckets. It's not always that cut and dry, but just for sake of not missing somebody that could be on the verge of a good round. And obviously we'll do some additional checks here. Like Andrew Putnam, Paul Peterson losing 14 yards off the tee. It's so strange. Putnam gained 3.2, 7,100. Paul Peterson 6,200. I don't think they would probably pop in a lot of sims anyways. Let's keep them out and just kind of keep it on the back of our mind. So like if Putnam and Peterson look different after round one, when we go back to round one, just to kind of cross check a few things, we can add one of them. Peterson's not really doing much for me, but Andrew Putnam, man, Maybe. We'll see. Probably don't want to chase that. We got McIntyre. Phillip Knowles missed the cut. Crap. Look good today. 300 today. His numbers look really good. Lost a little bit putting. So, yeah, there's definitely, like you said, like this would be perfect bounce back spots for some of these guys. Like Knowles' numbers look great. Lost a little bit putting. Approach was okay, but not like top of the board. So he wouldn't be on anybody's like top of their radar. But that would be a great play for tomorrow if he was playing. I think that's it. I don't see anybody really. A couple missed cut guys had some pretty good rounds, but losing a bunch putting. Norlander, Grillo. I can kind of see them in the 12 feet range. We'll add those two. McGreevy, Smalley, Phillips. Okay. Darren. Ha! What's up, Darren? McGreevy. Here's McGreevy. Not bad. So pretty good 12 feet range. 7, 9, 11. Not bad. Like not bright green, so not in like the top 20%. Or that might even be a top 10%. Pretty good overall. Good catch. We'll add him. I think if I would have gone down the 12-foot range, he probably would have got caught pretty quickly, I hope. Let's check. So if we did the 12-foot range, we got 8, 7, 6, and 5. Yeah, he would have been nestled in the 5s. Might have got lost. So good catch there. It's probably best to just kind of get a bigger bucket as your first run through. So that's never a bad thing. We can go through pricing really quick and just check if anybody else looks crazy good that we missed. I don't think so. I think we got all the good ones. Like Putnam's tricky. And he can putt, so it's not even like a concern with that. 8 under's not like we wouldn't be playing him to shoot 8 under. It would be 7100 expecting him to shoot another 5 under. Like that's kind of what we're looking at. Victor Perez, not bad. Approach number looks really good. So we'll add Victor Perez. Jesper Svensson. I looked at his numbers earlier. This dude is gaining 25 yards on the field distance. Everything else is green. The 18-foot bucket doesn't catch. 24 feet's pretty good. So you can see that big drop off there. It's only 6 feet. And he's got 10 shots today inside of 24 feet and only 5 inside of 18 feet. So, like, that's a perfect example. I'm going to add Jesper for sure. And I think we'll add Fishburne. And that's it. Okay. Let's go check out round 1. Round 1. We'll go off salary. We'll just look at the guys we favorited. Probably ideally, we probably should have started with total and got everybody cumulative and then went back round 2, round 1, but it's all right. For sake of time, this will still work pretty well. Oh, sorry, dude. McGreevy, Smalley, and Phillips. I missed the other 2. Did I catch them? Smalley. Pretty rough. Yeah, not terrible, not great. We can look at round 1 for him really quick. And Phillips looks good. Smalley round 1. Obviously fantastic. We'll just keep him in there. Screw it. Let's check these guys. Let's just see if anybody like really looked awful. Victor Perez, kind of disgusting. Fishburne, pretty rough, and he was already a thin play, so I'll take him out. Norlander's kind of borderline. Victor Perez is kind of the concerning one, really. We'll just look at total really quick, and then we'll hop into lineup IQ. Yeah. Victor. take a peek really quick at Victor. Off the tee, Spectrum positive. I'm kind of indifferent. And that's DraftKings salaries for next week. So don't let that confuse you. 7,100. We'll just leave them in there and we'll see if we get any of them. I'm kind of impartial. Like if we get some of them, that's fine. If we don't, not worried about it at all. So I think we're good. Let's hop into lineup IQ. If you guys have any questions, we can always go back. So not a big deal. All right. So let's hop into Showdown. Got all of our guys favorited already. So if you want to just include everybody, you could, or if you need to check other people. I will say, as far as lineup IQ goes, anything you check or deselect in here is not going to affect the other tools. So the way I viewed this is all your research is done prior to running lineups and running your sims. So if for some reason, let's just say you had a super tight pool, you had 20 guys and you wanted to run 500 or 1,000 lineups and you kind of run into issues, I don't want you to lose your work of your top 20 guys. So anything you do in here will not affect your saved players across the site. So just a heads up there. So if for some reason you're like, now we're going to go check Fishburne, he's not going to show up as a favorite in Stat Model Pro or something like that, or the EAP data. So just wanted to clarify that really quick. So we have Showdown, we have DraftKings and FanDuel. Right now, neither have ownership projections, but we do have your own exposures that you can set. And you can kind of, with Classic, you can match the ownership projections so that you can just use the field. Basically, you can build like matching the field. We can set a global min and max, do whatever you want to do. So I'm just going to run it. We'll see how fast this runs. We'll just do 500. Usually not too concerned if I build to the full salary. There's so many combinations in golf. It's not really a problem, but for sake of entertainment, we'll do 49.9 and we'll actually drop this. I've played plenty of lineups in Showdown. It's like 48.7 and I wouldn't be opposed to like 48.2. Below that, I probably don't want to. And honestly, with like what we have checked, we don't have any guys. We didn't have Connors, Lowry, Aberg check. So like in here, that might be something you would go back and like, hey, I just want some of these guys project out really well. Maybe I just need to include them, which is totally fine. So let's go ahead and generate 500 lineups. So it spits it out pretty straightforward. You get your lineups, projected points, total salary. I'm going to run 5,000 sims for now. And I'll kind of walk you through how I approach it at this point. And then ideally we'll have the last step be you can kind of run this against the projected field. But this is all your lineups, and we're just kind of simulating ourselves to see like projected points doesn't always equate to wins and top fives. So I'm going to sort on win percentage. And this is how I used it yesterday. So I think you guys, do you take into consideration historical good birdie makers? Yeah. And that also gets baked into the projection. So certainly something to consider. I don't do enough of like specific round stuff. I probably should a little bit, but I don't love from a data side that someone drastically outplays their baseline in one specific round over another. But like there is some cases for sure when like someone has a lead, someone is 10 shots back, is 3 shots back. Like things start to skew a little bit and go different directions. But yeah, I don't do birdie makers. Darren's a server. Yeah. I don't do enough of like specific round by round, like baseline adjustments in terms of, let's just say like Wyndham Clark or Grillo's a popular round 2 play. I think I'm pretty sure I got a group chat with some guys and I think Grillo in round 2 is always a thing. And I don't do enough of that because honestly, it works out sometimes and you look like a genius, but all the other times it doesn't. So is he still going to be a round 2 guy going forward, or like when does that end? So sometimes it's just not randomness, but certainly the volatility. And like they had their good round on Thursday versus Saturday, and it's possible they've had it several weeks in a season, and it just looks that way. But we'll continue. So pretty simple, honestly. So I'll run. So we have all of our lineups here, all of our wins. Instead of checking each of these, we can also like check our exposures and make sure like, we have a bunch of Robert McIntyre. If we want to rebuild or generate more, we could do that. So like from a balance standpoint, you could go set this. You can just set a global to 40 is pretty good. So we can do a global to 40. So we do that. We can generate another 500 lineups. We'll do 48 up to 50,000. So we'll generate another 500 with those exposure constraints. Hopefully it runs. It's the first time testing it, actually. Haven't done any generate more. It's perfect. There we go. That's why we test. Perfect. There it goes. Now it's going. So got it hung up for some reason. We'll look at that later too. So we did get the extra, I don't know, what is that? 382 that met the exposures. So we have 682 now. We can run our simulations on all those. And then what I want to do is I want to do a mass delete on. So we have several options. So this is how I like to do it. And this is what I would do in my personal stuff anyways, is basically get a bunch of lineups, you run them, and then you're just kind of trimming out the bottom performers. So the way it would work is ideally with like the contest sim, you would run it, you would get your number. You could run a little bit more than what you're going to enter anyways. That's not a problem. But let's just say you had 500 and it's a 10,000 person contest. So you run your contest sims, you figure out your top 250, we'll say 250 or 200 lineups, and then go run those against themselves. And they'll kind of start to spread out and diversify a little bit, because now the lineups that had Rory, Corey Connors, Victor Perez, because we were just talking about it, they can't always win when there's 3 other guys that are differently paired with them. So now they'll start to spread out. They're not going to just be bunched up at the top. Those 3 guys aren't going to carry all those lineups. So it's a good way to diversify. So we can kind of do the same thing here. So we will do a couple splits. We got 682. What are we looking at for like the low range? Like probably pretty small. Yeah. A bunch of these don't win at all. Like 0.06% of the time. So we will do a bottom 50%. We'll rerun our sims. These numbers will update with the new lineup pool. So you can see they start, like a lot are very similar. A couple really good ones and then a bunch right in the middle. So let's just take out like the bottom. We'll take out the bottom 50 again. And then we're getting close. So we're down to 171. And now we start to see a trend here of, all these lineups up here at the top are pretty good. So let's do a bottom 75% delete, because there's a pretty good spread. So like the way I would view it is looking at how much is this drop off starting to be. Like if these are all really close, like it wouldn't really happen. But if these are really close, all like above 0.8, and it was 0.8 and 0.8 and 0.8, then I probably need to do something different to figure out which ones are my favorites, I guess. So let's just do bottom 75, because this looks like a pretty nice drop off. 1%, 0.9%, 0.86 down to 0.78. So if we drop out the bottom 75%, leaves us with 43 lineups. We'll run this one more time. And now you can see how these got bunched up pretty quickly. So we can do other stuff. So like all of these down here, don't really care about that. We'll trim out another 50. Run it one more time. And then this is basically how I would sort it. Yeah, like there's a couple down here, the 3.72. I can delete out him. If I'm trying to get to like 20 lineups, we can sort by top 10, win. Do one more round. I just need to take out one guy. So I'm just looking for one guy to drop. There we go. Perfect. So there it is. There's our exposures. So again, we set our exposure to 40 for the second run. So this is showing like over or under whatever we picked. So right now with everything we did, actually, I don't even think that updated. So that's another perfect, another example where I need to go check that the exposures get updated after we run and delete out the sims. So this is what it looks like, but we can do this. I might have to change the view really quick. Let's do this. Bear with me. I'm going to pull up Excel, the fun stuff. The exposures should match, but since they don't, then I have to do some manual stuff. So we'll do this really quick. We change the view. How do I change? Present. One second. We got, here we go. Okay. So pretty simple. You could just upload those straight to DK, but what I like to do, I do this with like tennis stuff because I run tennis in Python. And I don't give myself like a clean output on my final lineups because I do a bunch of stuff in Excel. So I just do like a count if on all the lineups for each player. So we got a ton of, mainly probably because we're just using up so much salary. That's probably where you would want to go back in and add Connors, Lowry, Aberger, just kind of cap off the exposure for those guys. They're not like must plays, but they're certainly the highest projection. So they're going to want to be, that's not what I want to do, be played quite a bit. So pretty tight pool. We started with 20 guys, I think, that ended up being in those first couple lineups. You can see really heavy on McIntyre and Sam Burns are the highest priced guys. Alex Smalley did pop. So including him still, very good showdown scorer, makes a lot of birdies and obviously had a good round one. Max McGreevy, Benny on, which is interesting at 7K. You know, he should be, I mean, the guy was in signature events not too long ago. Kevin Roy's a really good scorer. I get a lot of him from time to time. Jesper Svensson, Justin Lauer's another good showdown candidate. And then Henrik Norlander. So it will change. We can do one more thing really quick. So let's do, I'm trying to think. Do you ever run the pool fully and use popping first to get a feel for ownership combos? You can do that for sure. That's what I was about to do actually. Let me reshare. Let me reshare this. And honestly, with let me take this off. What I tinkered with on Wednesday was we don't have. Hang on one second. So right now we don't have ownership projections up for the U.S. Open. I already put the field in for the U.S. Open. So we had ownership projections, and there's a button. This is kind of what I was talking about earlier. I kind of hacked the contest sims just for this sake of building field lineups. You can match the ownership projections to the projected ownership. So match the exposures to the projected ownerships and then build all your lineups off of that. They worked pretty well. And then I didn't even trim the pool, or I trimmed it a lot. It was like the bottom 900. I built 1,000, trimmed out the bottom 900, and then simmed those last 100 just to kind of diversify that and get the best performers out of those. So yes, you can do this. Ideally, like I said, I'm going to try to get the contest stuff set up so like the field lineups are already generated and they don't generate on the fly. That was like the biggest hang up on the last contest sims we had up. But yeah, you can definitely, like I said, none of this carries over. So you can tinker with all these players if you want. Let's do that. Let's do 1,000. Doesn't take too long. Let's assume most players are going to build. So like this is kind of building a fake field in a way. Most are going to build 49.4 to 50,000 on the dot. Exposures. Let's just try to force in like 5% to everybody. It won't do it, but we can try to make it go. I don't think, is anybody going to be over 40% owned tomorrow? I don't think we have like, there's no Scotty, no Rory. So there's no like, I would see these guys being spread out. So let's even drop that to like 35%. And it should apply. And it didn't. Perfect. So there's one more thing. Add to the list. Why did it work on here? Hang on. We're going to troubleshoot this really quick. Just doesn't want me to do it. 5, 35. No, somehow I bugged it out. We'll just come back into it. Let's try it now. I said 5 as a minimum. No, of course not. Okay, well, we're good. 0 to 40, we'll just run it. 1,000 lineups. 49.4, 50,000. Generate with everybody. Let's see what this looks like. Yeah, honestly, I'll do a video next week too, Darren. Because the idea here is because I was going down a bad rabbit hole of having like some people were messaging wanting an optimizer, and then some people, obviously, the sims are very, very important and very popular. So then I was like fighting those two battles, and then like Showdown came up, and I was trying to do sims for that and like an optimizer built into it. So I just kind of, the goal is to just put everything into lineup IQ, and we're going to have, you know, like, we'll continue to clean this up. This is kind of, I'd say a work in progress, but I'm pretty pleased with the current design and the functionality. Like a couple bugs popped up tonight, not a big deal. We can fix those. And then the goal would be, this is what I did last week, as far as testing it out as a process to incorporate lineup IQ, was like driving IQ, approach IQ, did all my favorites. Because again, like every week you can come in here and clear favorites. I want to do as much as I can in these tools. So yeah, driving IQ, approach IQ. One thing I messed with this week, which I don't normally do, is I went into Stat Model Pro and I pulled up putting stats. Eventually we'll have like a putting IQ thing, but and then I just took out a bunch of guys that sucked at putting and tried to trim the pool down as much as I can, then came in here and ran everything in here. So it all worked out pretty well. So this is the new exposures, pretty much everybody. So this is what you're talking about, Spaz, I think. Let me undo all these things. So yeah, so like we set to 40, maybe we would have got a little bit more if it was, you know, wide open. But this is pretty good. I wouldn't say this is going to be accurate to ownership, but it's probably pretty close. We'll see. Screenshot this so we can compare. Because again, it's using our projections, and everybody's not using our projections. So like it would probably be pretty close, but not dead on. And then it thins out quite a bit as you go down in the salary and the pricing, and it's cuts off, but you can see everybody here. So a bunch of guys that just kind of 5%. This is probably close. I imagine, just talking out loud, a couple of these guys that had good, are in good position for the event so far, like Richard T. Lee. I assume that goes up to 10 plus. People just get sucked into position on the leaderboard, but we'll see. But this is kind of like a fair value assessment. But yeah, then you can run this. This is 1,000 lineups. We'll just call this a fair field. I'm going to run 5,000 again. Ideally, we're going to bump that up to like 10 plus. Actually runs pretty quick. And even like the custom sims for like your own projections and outrights and stuff runs relatively fast. Like you can run 50,000 and I think it takes 5 minutes or less, or 3 minutes, which is pretty good. And then here we go. So like, yeah, I would take this and let's just take, what do we have? 1,000. Let's just delete out like the bottom 950. So we're left with 50. I'm not even going to sim these. Let's just assume these were all equally good. Pretty close. Like there's a few that are much better. But let's add this to the Excel sheet really quick and see what the exposures look like there. Ideally, the exposures would update, but they apparently are still thinking I had 1,000 lineups. So we'll fix it. Let me reshare the Excel. All right. And then I'll just copy in the new lineup. So I'm just going to replace these. Let me unfilter this. Let's see what this looks like. In fact, I will copy this over so we can compare. How about that? So this was like my first gin. Pretty heavy because I kept simming it. So like the high sim outputs, and I didn't have anybody else like high price to kind of bump them against. Obviously have a ton of McIntyre and a ton of Sam Burns, probably more than we would want. But here, this is be the top 50 out of 1,000 using a relatively close field. We'll just be generous. And you can see this gets a bit more spread out. I kind of want to do percentage. So there's that percentage. Clear that out. And then this is, how many lines we got? 50? Yeah. So divided by 50, and you'll see the exposure differences. Two key things that kind of stand out. Obviously, a bunch of these guys missed the cut, so like zeros aren't really leveraging anything. But I think honestly I have zero for anybody in this column. That's zero. We'll assume is not playing. You can see this gets spread out a lot more, which is pretty good. You know, when you think about a bunch of players and a bunch of entries, there's a more wide open chance that different combinations can win or finish high. So, you know, by using 1,000 lineups and taking out the top 50 of 5,000 sims, this gets pretty spread out because these guys pop, you know, every round, or I should say one round of event. So they end up being on a winning lineup. They get combined with somebody else. So it gets very spread out, which honestly, if you looked at Osimo, JBC, I'm not sure if JBC got any different, but like they tend to spread out their exposures quite a bit and they catch groupings and then get a bunch of one-offs. So this is pretty indicative of, you know, a bigger tournament and running 50 lineups or 100 or 150 lineups, and you can see how the ownership kind of gets spread out. Now, as far as sims go, I guess the interesting thing would be when we saw Corey Connors at 30. I have it pulled up still. As far as under and over, I think Spaz had asked about this last week. So like Corey Connors, when we first ran it, he was in 37% of lineups and he's in 38. So he's basically matching the field. So the sims say that's fair ownership. Shane Lowry is different. So he was in 34% of lineups, and in sims, based on his projection, his simulations, and his price, he's only in 20% of our lineup. So we would be underweight the field in that scenario. So that's also something interesting to look at, and extremely excited that Aberg is in 42% of lineups. But yeah, hopefully that helps. We'll clean this up. I got all week, and I'm excited to kind of keep hammering this. But that is kind of the gist of it. Let me go pull it back up really quick, and then we can close this out. Here we go. And I'll make sure I check your questions. Oh yeah. So going back, like Spectrum and IQ basically instead of Spectrum EAP. Yeah. And honestly, like projections for like showdown, I kind of lean on them a good bit. The EAP helps a lot of like maybe identifying guys that should be bumped up, or maybe guys that just be taken out completely. But generally speaking, the showdown projections fully encompass like their range of outcomes. Now, every week, some guys play a little bit better than their baseline than normal. But from a sample size perspective, the showdown projection I lean on quite a bit. It makes sense with pricing soft, yeah. We hope. I don't know what it is. What was Aberg's price on DraftKings? 9,600. Like, it's just so disrespectful. Like, price this guy down in like the 8s. Let us have some fun for once. But yeah, that would be the gist of it. Like I said, I made some notes and we'll do that. But everything will be kind of brought through lineup IQ. So like whenever we're building anything, my goal, I know everybody else has their own process, totally fine. But my goal would be, I run through the IQ tools. We're working through, I think I published this actually. This is not done yet, but I want to integrate it a little bit more. But there'll be a player IQ sheet, and instead right now it's just 2 tabs. So at least you don't have to like jump around between two different views, but it'd be approach and driving all together. Ideally, it's all together anyways. But you could do all your stuff here, do your checks, get everything you want, Stat Model Pro, kind of run through it, and then really cleans up the process on a Wednesday night, assuming everything is kind of to what everyone likes to do. 1 is generate lineups. I know that's a given. And then 2 is the sims. And you could all, like I said, sim your own, sim it against the contest. And that's kind of like the final version. But this would be like the final step. Once you do all your checks, you get your player pool. And then it's super simple. And you go run everything. And you do FanDuel. Honestly, showdown for FanDuel, since I don't think there's any projections for ownership out there anyways. It probably wouldn't be a bad idea to just tinker with this over the weekend. Running wide open. We're still maxed at 40. Run 5,000. Because you'll see the contests for FanDuel are super soft, but I'm going down a terrible tangent. John McNutt, thank you. We'll do more of this, and honestly, I have a guest supposed to be lined up for next week to do at least a show. We'll do the podcast, obviously, at least a show before the U.S. Open and highlight some tools and some process stuff. And then I have a guest lined up for hopefully every showdown round. That would be fun. But yeah, so this would be pretty simple. Just make sure when you do this, you sort it, because it doesn't know what you want to delete the bottom of. And we'll do more of these talks and like shows and stuff like that. But like, make sure like it's sorted by win and not just projection, or not sorted at all. And then you can start to clean it up, because it's just going to sort the bottom. So if you sort it in reverse, you're going to delete all your best lineups basically. We can just keep going. Take out the bottom. What do we got? 125. Let's take out the bottom 100. There we go. And then a final sim, and we can get, like, I would be pretty pleased with this. Like, these guys are around 8% for a top 5. Again, out of this pool lineups, not in the tournament. But it's a pretty good drop off. Same with the wins. So bottom 50. And then we should see one more jump. Yeah. So I would probably just I think you can only enter 7 or 5 into the FanDuel one. I'd probably just take out these bottom 3. We're at 10. We'll run it one more time. And then just delete out the bottom 50%. And just export that and run with it. So this one looks like we got a good bit of Corey Connors, Matt McCarty, a lot of Corey Connors, a little bit of Matt McCarty, Max McGreevy, and pretty spread out after that. So, okay. Gonna upload that. We're gonna play that in FanDuel tomorrow. All right. That's it for now. Thank you for the intro for kind of the next version of this, but it'll get cleaned up and we'll be cooking. I'm excited. So we got all weekend. The course preview pro is up. We don't have any good data on Oakmont in terms of what was played in 2016 when DJ won. So we have like the basic stuff, driving accuracy, green and regulation, all that stuff. Been trying to see what I can scrape together for like distance buckets, approach buckets, etc. But yeah, all this stuff we do have lead in form, obviously. But yeah, not much on the Oakmont 2016 US Open, unfortunately. But you can check it out. And then we'll do a podcast and we'll be off and running for next week. So Spaz, appreciate you, man. Always appreciate your support and everybody else that's been in here. So like I said, we'll be doing more of these, especially as we kind of add in new features, but glad you guys could join and just kind of get a first look at it. Feel free to check it out this weekend. It's already up. Just click Lineup IQ at the top and just make sure you're filtered on, or you go to the Showdown slate and not the Classic slate. You'll probably realize when Scotty's not, or Scotty's listed and he shouldn't be. So I think that's it, guys. As always, I'm in the Discord. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions, and we will talk to you later. Good luck tomorrow.